Stephen, Lee, welcome to the podcast. Super excited to talk about your work as writers, producers, showrunners. But you've also got a new company, Moving Floor, which we can confirm today is not a company specializing in hydraulically driven moving floor conveyance systems for loading pallets into trucks, but it's actually a Queensland-based production company. So very excited to talk to you guys about that. It says you've got heaps of projects in development, which is very exciting for our fans of Harrow out there, which have submitted a bunch of questions that we're going to answer later in the podcast. Thank you so much for sending in your questions. Some really good ones from around the world too, so that's very exciting. And I guess as a screenwriter myself, it's going to be super interesting just to learn more about your process, about how the industry is dealing during COVID, and even some fun trivia. But first, roll the intro. All right, and welcome to episode 27 of the SLOP Podcast, the interview series that fills your ears with wild discussions, fascinating stories, and unique insights from Australia's most promising creators like Stephen M. Irwin, screenwriter, producer, novelist, and Leigh McGrath, producer and writer. You guys have worked on Harrow, Tidelands, Secrets and Lies. Lee, you just got a second season of 5 Bedrooms. Very exciting. So I became aware of Harrow and Tidelands through a Q&A that I attended, I think at Garden City with you and Shane Armstrong. And we just did a podcast with Shane recently that comes out next week, close to Halloween. But I asked him if he had any questions for you guys, and he said...
You both seem like such nice men. What are you doing in the film industry?
Okay, we'll open with that. And I thought that was a really great segue into talking about your breaking in stories and just a bit of an explanation of why you chose this industry and what keeps you hanging around.
Look, it's a good question. It's not an industry for the faint-hearted. I mean, and it's an industry where you have to become pretty good at rejection. But Shane's an absolute lovely human and a real gentleman, and it's so nice that he, said such nice things about us. Now we feel obliged. Yeah. But, we both came into this business and we've been in it for the long term. We came to it from different directions, completely different directions. We both started off going to art college at Queensland College of Art, not at the same time or in the same year, because I'm, very much a Civil War kind of era and you're much more Vietnam War. Yeah. But then after graduating, I had a very checkered career where I did all sorts of different jobs as I was trying to work out how to monetize what little knowledge I had. So I worked part-time as a roadie. I worked part-time as a drinks waiter, as a handyman, and also worked as a freelance writer for various production companies making training videos around, all sorts of different things. How to build a road, how to make a suit for a day, how to make plate glass, how the Brisbane Airport baggage handling system works. And all of this was really retrospectively helpful because it allowed me, or it forced me to try and understand where story existed in uninteresting or seemingly boring process. Here is a process, understand it, and then retranslate that back visually and in audio for an audience and make it engaging. So it's about how do you take something and find story within it or make story around it to package it. And so that discipline of hundreds and hundreds of these 5, 10, 15-minute videos was really helpful, and it progressed into into doing actual documentary. I made a couple for SBS, and then from that I started doing my own short films, most of which were comedies, which hasn't really reflected very much in my television career or in my novel writing career because
Harrow's funny.
Harrow has funny moments. It has hilarious moments. Not many.
All those murders.
Murder, nice murders. And writing the short films. I also wrote some short stories, and the short stories won some prizes and got published, and that gave me the perhaps the false courage to write long stories, and wrote some novels, which was really exciting and gratifying. to see them published, and out of that process and connections, because, and this is where, circling back to why it's nice to be nice, is that 20 years ago when I was doing these documentaries, I met a young Anthony Mullins, who is another lovely human and a writer. And he was working for a company at the time, a Brisbane company, and he invited me in just to be another story head in the room. And Leigh had just started at Hoodlum as their head of television, and I was just in there, to be another story brain in the room. And we kind of struck up a really pretty quick friendship, and not just a friendship, but also an understanding of how we each thought about and responded to story. And that started off, a really what's been a fun,
fruitful,
diverse working relationship.
Yes.
Yeah, but Leigh came into it in a very different way.
Probably the way I came in was considered more traditional 10 years ago. That you got out of uni. Although when I got out of uni, I wanted to be a director, like most people, wanted to be Steven Spielberg.
Yeah.
No one was hiring. So I started writing. And I wrote the things I loved. So I wrote a Star Trek script, I think, Next Generation, and then I wrote a Seinfeld script, and I sent them off to Hollywood, and they got promptly let us back saying, we can't read your writing, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
But they got me jobs in the local soaps in Australia. So I worked on a soap down the coast, and that got me into the business. I really understood how it was a different training world. That led to Home and Away and a few other shows like that. And I really learnt my chops on those 5-day-a-week, half-hour serials, which is still a valid way in. But in those days, there was a path. You could go from the half-hour serials up to the 1-hour dramas like All Saints or the Blue Healers and work your way up. That was still valid when I started. It was getting harder and harder because the shows were becoming reduced in their output. They were doing 42 1-hour episodes of shows like All Saints a year. So there was work and room for a lot of writers.
Yeah.
After a couple of shows in Sydney, I got asked by Fremantle, Grundy, who make Neighbours, as you know, and Sail of the Century and all those shows, to go to England and work on the soaps all through Europe. So I worked on versions of Neighbours in Italy, set in Naples in a castle. I worked up in Sweden on a version of, Prisoner, and in Germany. And that was really interesting. So what that really taught me was, drama around the world is exactly the same. Everyone responds to the same stuff. Society or the culture just tends to be a bit of a veneer, quite frankly.
Yeah.
And it was really fascinating. And then again, that led me to the BBC, and I worked on The Bill for a while as the head writer there and the story editor. And just show after show, I did so much different stuff with so many interesting people. The Jim Henson Company I worked with, Eddie Izzard I worked with. So it was stacks of great people who I loved.
Yeah.
It was really interesting. And then my wife had a baby, came back to Brisbane, and then I promptly met Steve. And I wanted to produce at that point. The BBC was sort of gearing me up to become a producer. I did the BBC Producers Training Program, and they were gearing me that way.
Okay.
But I really wanted to come back to Australia. When I came back and I joined Hoodlum, I said I want to be a producer. At that time, almost unheard of that a writer could be a producer. There's maybe one or two who'd done it. Now it's becoming much more normal, the showrunner thing. And so we're kind of paving the way, I suppose, in those days. And then I met Steve, and we kind of put together Secrets and Lies, which sold so quickly, it was unbelievable.
Yeah.
Steve wrote I sort of sat in the room with you.
Well, I came up with the idea and wrote a one-pager and sent it to you. And that afternoon you said, this is good. And you had some notes, and we reworked it, I think, in the next day or two. Yeah. And then I think you sent it to a guy you'd worked with before, Rick Mayer at Network 10. And he responded positively enough that we were able to write the pilot.
The next morning he said, that's right.
And then after the pilot, he read the pilot.
Yes.
Yeah, I think the next morning he greenlit the show.
Let's make the show.
Yeah.
So that's incredible.
So it was super fast.
He rang me one day. I remember
quick.
Rick Mayer rang me and said, who is this Stephen M. Irwin guy? Never heard of him.
What's the M for?
Stephen had never done the traditional writer's
It's the man
part.
who does the galvanized pipes videos.
Exactly.
He knows
He'd never
all
done
about
that.
roads.
He'd never done the traditional writing thing in Sydney and Melbourne, as I had done. So no one had heard of him. But as soon as I read Stephen's script, I knew this was a guy of a certain level of talent that I'd not encountered in a long time. Even I'm talking about England as well there.
Yeah.
It's very rare to see that level of talent. So I understood that immediately. And within 6 or 7, a couple of months, we'd written all of Secrets and Lies, 6 episodes.
You had to teach me a lot of stuff about,
what's a cliffhanger?
Structuring commercial breaks, which we will probably things of the past now. We'll look back on it like analog clocks and go, commercial breaks.
But that was great. So we did that, and that led to Harrow and
and
Tidelands.
Australia
The rest
Day.
is history.
Yeah.
the rest is history.
So what is the partnership like? I mean, you guys have said you worked together for about 8 years. You're in an official collaboration now. You're you've signed the prenups, you're connected. But how does it manifest? I mean, how do you divide the work between each other? are you redrafting each other's work? Do you sort of divide work? Where's the crossover?
It's probably continued much as it has over the last few projects. Like with Secrets and Lies, where we started off, I was the writer and you were really editing and shaping.
That's right.
And then as we moved into Harrow Season 2 and Tidelands, and you started writing again, which was great, then you kind of would give scripts to me and I would give notes on it. And that's the way it's worked. We don't actually go, okay, you write the first half and I write the second half.
Yeah.
We will write our own drafts and then we'll feed back on them. And
fortunately, into
fortunately,
our own projects now, Moving Floor. So we have our own separate projects in Moving Floor, and ones we collaborate with together. But usually there's one writer on those.
Yeah.
Like Steve's just written a thing about the Nazis, and that we both come up with,
Yeah.
but he's helping me out with this thing I'm writing about, the Dust Bowl in Oklahoma. So we kind of just help each other out that way. We just figure throw as many darts at the board, and hopefully one of them will stick. Is kind of the approach.
the process is pretty interesting. We will often separately come up with an idea for a show and pitch it into the other person, who will invariably go, you know what, that's a really good idea. And then what if you did this little thing in it or this thing in it? And suddenly you go, that's great. And then suddenly you've got what you really need, which is that one-page pitch document, which is the marketable document that you can then show to other people. To get whatever it is, maybe a letter of interest, or even just to have that encouragement to go, you know what, this is really good. I wrote a one-pager not that long ago this year for a what would you call it? Fleabag meets Murder, She Wrote kind of.
Okay. I really responded to that one,
And I kind of went, I don't know this is unusual, but you read it and you went, this is great.
It was unlike anything I'd read.
And because we were fortunate enough to under the auspices of our new company Moving Floor to get support from Screen Queensland Enterprise funding,
amazing.
that we just went, this is really great. We've got some interest in the UK about this one already. So that is the process. It's exciting ourselves first, trying to get the other person, putting it up the flagpole and seeing if they salute.
We have never reacted. We've never, you often go to these markets and network stuff. So we're looking for a sort of a funny, or they sort of put out, what they're looking for right now. And we've never actually worked that way. We sort of just write things that we like, because all our successes have only ever come from things that we've loved and got excited about. Harrow was like that, because we were told you can't sell a procedural in this climate, and yet we've sold it. And
exactly.
A huge hit for 3 years. And because of our love of Quincy and the Rockford Files, really, and that's where that show came from. So that's often what happens. Secrets and Live it came from your experience of running one morning.
I just went running, and it's all about the what if, and that's what all of this is. It's that speculation of what if.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm in this situation and this unusual thing happens, or what if I'm in this unusual situation and something completely unexpected happens. It's that what if, and it's questions.
What's also fascinating is people say, where do you get your ideas from? It's a classic question we all get. I mean, it was fascinating. Stephen had a phone call recently, and he was told, I think by one of the commissioners over in England, we're looking for this kind of stuff. So Stephen just took a day to sit down and kind of try to think up a show.
Yeah,
and he did.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's amazing. And John Cleese talks about that. Sit down some days and actually sit there and kind of come up with something.
Yeah,
and you will.
Which is exactly the opposite of what we said before, that we never chase the market.
Yes,
but it's
the one.
Well, it's more about style of show, though, because once you, and I think it's a lesson that I learned a long time ago. I'd co-written a feature film, a vampire film, with a friend, which is now having a resurgence. But as soon as that was out there and it was getting some good interest, Twilight happened, and suddenly there was this overload of Twilight and
zombies were the big thing for a while,
and there was, what was the other one set in Louisiana?
Oh, yeah, True Blood.
True Blood.
Yeah.
So those two things kind of went, okay, we're all sick of vampires, and so for the next 15 years, this thing's just sat in a drawer.
But they're all cyclical, and they
it's
come
cyclical,
back.
exactly.
And so, if you get out the gate.
And now we know that there's a network in the States that has the rights to all of Anne Rice's material, and so there's going to be a whole new wave of vampire stuff coming, 2021, 22. So it all comes in cycles, and it's the same with rom-coms. It's the same, we know, with hefty dramas, with sci-fi,
with dystopian future stuff.
Future stuff,
whatever it is.
and people, you cannot chase the appetites anymore.
Yep.
And there's so many different places to sell now. I mean, the desire for content inside streamers, particularly out of the US, is massive. And if you look at Netflix's, what Apple are doing and Hulu and stuff like that, it's a lot of interesting and different stuff happening.
Well, speaking of interesting and different stuff happening, that brings us to Moving Floor, which is obviously your guys' new company. Let us know what's going on there. I mean, you talked a little bit about it when
it's terrible coffee.
But yeah, like run us through that and where you're at and how long has it been in the plans?
It wasn't really a plan at all.
No.
The plan, thanks COVID, was Harrow was in its final weeks of filming.
Yep.
And COVID shutdowns meant that we had to pull the plug on it with 1 week to go.
Yeah.
And we realised that we had many yawning months ahead of us, which, where we would be, the writing that we intended to do after Harrow had finished would have to start now. We'd have to start, writing stuff. And we pretty much, it was great. We've loved Harrow. We've done 30 episodes of it, and we're quite, ready to just let that field sit fallow for a little while and do some other things. And so we dusted off our slates, and we were just talking about, I've got this and we've got that, and we realised we've got like 40 projects between us of things we want to do. Why aren't we working together? We're going to continue to work. And we said, of course we'll continue working together. And it was really a discussion with Screen Queensland where lovely Joe Dillon at Screen Queensland suggested, you should, if you are serious about forming a company, you should, progress that now.
Yeah.
And we didn't really know what was in the offing there. But we
showrunners are the way of the future. She knew that. Writer, creator, producers were the way forward.
That's
the old style Australian producers, not so much anymore. But
well, it is ever since the golden age of TV started with The Sopranos and The West Wing and Breaking Bad. That showrunner model has proved itself incredibly resilient, and we've. By dint of the process, mostly through Harrow, but also through Tidelands, where we will be there from that first one-page pitch through to the last sound mix. We're there for the whole process as much as possible, in every aspect of it, feeding back on props and art department, feeding back on casting, feeding back on locations,
making the coffees,
and the edits,
making bad coffee. We're there, so we kind of thought, well, there's nothing there's no aspect of the process we don't understand and we haven't really done, and we're a one-stop shop. We have low overheads, and we're still strong enough to move furniture. So we registered a company. We came up with we had a short list of names. Backwards and forwards and
things from Raiders one night.
There
we
were
back all these different lines out of Raiders Lost Ark, and then finally, I think you struck on.
Yeah, I think it was.
Why does the floor move?
Why does the floor move, sir?
Indeed. Why does the floor move?
Sala says to him.
Very dangerous.
Peering into the well of the soul.
You go first.
Yes, that's right.
So we called it Moving Floor,
which also talks about.
Well, it talks about the fact that when in good drama, you want surprises. You want, and I think it was in what was it in the third Indy Jones film. It was X never ever marks the spot.
Exactly.
And it does. Yeah, you always want the floor to fall out. That's when the floor falls out from under you.
Fantastic.
So that's
the other thing we often do in the room, and I'll say, oh, you mean we're talking about an idea in a sort of scene or a point, and I'll say, oh, like in Dog Day Afternoon or something. He's thinking, the bit with it, and so you sort of know what you're talking about. It'll never be a complete rip off of that. Yeah. But often you talk about the tone.
It's a shorthand to go like that moment in that film that we both, we both fortunately like. Not always the same, but we have a very broad crossover in our tastes where we can have this shorthand that goes, well, what if you took a moment like that one in Witness or whatever,
that's right.
or this particular film or
so you got to be
Sideways or whatever.
If you work with us, you've got to be film literate in a way because we tend to talk about the stuff and talk about tone of things.
It cuts through a lot of explanation when you can go, this is what that moment did on the screen.
Yeah, exactly.
It conveyed emotion, it conveyed a visual understanding, it had a particular bit of dialogue, it had a joke that was structured in a certain way, and you can just cut to the core of what that moment represented. And we get to that a lot, going point of scene. What's the point of this scene? And then how do we get to that point in an interesting fashion? And then that's a lot of what our discussions are is, when we're structuring a story, we go, well, we know what happens here, but how do we make that thing that happens interesting?
That's actually the kind of the genius bit of the writing.
That's the hardest part.
That is the hardest part, because that's the bit not many people can do very well. A lot of people can come up with a story and stuff like that, but to actually make it really interesting and turn and twist,
storytelling.
and that every scene is almost a mini cliffhanger.
Yeah.
Every scene is a mini act.
Exactly.
Every act is
Every scene ends with a question.
Absolutely. Questions
or a
paramount.
new piece of information. Yeah, that's the hard part.
So you talked about the idea of the show running and, coming back from the UK, where it seems like that's very much the norm.
Yes, very
and
much.
then
And I
trying
was used
to foster that sort of culture here.
Let's talk
And
about that.
and well, what's the
Well,
what's the
on
story?
Secrets and Lies, I remember I came back from England. I just was back. I'd come back to work with Hoodlum, and Secrets and Lies was happening. And it was we got commissioned 6 episodes, and I had a call with Rick Mayer, and Tracy was in the room from Hoodlum. And we talked about, I said, well, Stephen can write all 6 episodes. And Rick was like, really? That was quite unusual and unheard of in Australia. I'd come from England where I'd work with one writer across 6 parts in certain TV shows. It's quite normal, right? And you look at Doctor Who and all that stuff, they were run by showrunners. So it was quite normal there, but it was unusual here. So, and Stephen sort of proved that could work. And there's been writers like Greg Hadrick who've done that as well. Maybe 2 or 3 writers they have on Underbelly and things like that. But that was unusual, and Steve proved it worked, and it was the consistent one voice across the thing. It made a lot of sense. And Harrow, you wrote 9 of the first 10, which almost killed Steve.
Not by choice.
No, it wasn't by choice.
and then going straight into Tidelands too.
Straight into
we went to the
Tidelands.
Logies, was it? Not went to the
Sounds like a fun time.
Well, I can't remember, but we went to the Logies one time for
Yeah.
Harrow.
It would have
And
been
I remember
at the end of-
Steve and I, we got to the Logies at 6 o'clock. They went to the Logies, boozed up, had great chats with Ray Maher and
I hadn't slept in 2 days. It was a great combination of no-dose and alcohol.
He was doing that.
So it was awesome.
4 a.m.
Writer's
we got
diet.
up. 4 a.m. got up to come back, and we started work on Harrow.
I think it was Harrow too. I think.
So it was pretty full on, but we were tired.
Yeah. No,
It doesn't show, which is extraordinary.
We have learned about the limitations of, if you want to do a good show, you do actually have to give it time. You can't say yes to everything.
Especially with a second season, it seems like, because it's like, that first season has a very clear directive, and a premise, right? And then having to go like, well, now we've got a season 2.
We've told that story. That's right.
Yeah, and now you have to come up with a whole other thing, but with half the amount of time that you had for the first one.
The second
very
series
like
was Chester, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Which I always felt was like a stalker story, and that was okay, but it was much more heightened in a way than the first season, and it worked really well. People responded really positively to it.
It was a lot of fun.
But then quite deliberately, I remember we sort of decided 3rd season we want to get back to an emotional basic.
Yeah.
And not have
Back
those
to first
kinds of car
principles.
exploding and all that kind of stuff. We didn't. Not there's anything wrong with that, but I'd done my fair share of that sort of stuff previously.
It was very Empire. And so I'm excited to
that's
see
interesting.
what maybe we
That's
get a
very
little bit.
flattering, very Empire.
Well, I mean, you really stripped him back to, and ended it in a very sort of dark place too. So we'll see.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, that's an interesting cliffhanger too.
It's funny how stories start at the end so much.
Yeah.
And as a writer, you need to have a sense of where you're going. There are some writers, and I certainly know a lot of great novelists who are quite happy to sit down at their keyboard and not know where they're going and just let the story take them.
Well, the mystery genre is interesting because it's almost like you sort of either have a start point of an idea, then you have to justify the reasons for it, or you can work backwards. So it's like, which way do you guys sometimes just start with a good idea and then move forward, or?
I think you always have to start with a good idea, but in the case of, and it's a good point with Harrow season 2, it starts where season 1 ends. What
was our cliffhanger?
We
Yes.
had a different ending for season 1.
And thank God for Temple of Doom. But anyway, we'll talk about that.
Yeah, that's
Why we
true.
came up with that ending.
And some of this
Doom.
was dictated by casting
Yes.
and cast availability,
Which we'll get
as
to
well.
in our Harrow questions. It is coming. Don't worry.
So we we had a different ending intended
Which we
for
shot.
the end of
shot
Harrow
it,
season
yes.
1, which
It's quite
was
devastating.
of Soraya Dass's death.
Wow, really?
She got murdered by potentially someone who was going to come back.
We
and
didn't
haunt
know
Harrow.
who.
Yes.
We were making it
Just
up.
possible.
Wow.
We didn't even have a name. And then, and
We
Mira,
watched it. We sat
Mira
there.
is a great
She's amazing.
actor and a director now, and
Yeah.
she has ambitions and plans which she's fulfilling. And I don't think that season 2 of Harrow was part of that. And so that. And other things dictated that we needed a different ending. That her
It
death
just
was
didn't-
not what was going
It
to
didn't have
carry
the
us in.
emotional power we thought it would have, I think, for the character of Harrow. We wanted something to happen to Harrow, not to someone who Harrow
Yeah.
knew. That was kind of
Well,
the
part of
basics
it also is, is it enough of a powder charge to power an entire season? Him mourning the death of
That's what we're
someone on a
concerned about.
table.
We're
Then it
concerned.
becomes a revenge story,
Which
which
eventually
is great if you're Liam Neeson.
did, yeah.
But it's not so good if you're Johan Gruffith and you're doing, this kind of a show where you have episodic crimes,
Yeah, exactly.
which are kind of light some of the time. They're not all heavy. Some of them are quite fun deaths.
So we spoke to ABC and they agreed we could bring Johan back for one day. We flew him back out
and shot him.
And we
shot
shot
the
him,
ending.
yeah.
And we literally shot him.
And, yeah.
And that came out of a conversation we were having. And
Well,
it's typical Doom. Because
it went from, maybe Harrow should be the one who's stabbed. No, he can't be stabbed. What if? And
Yeah.
then we went, well, that great at the start of Temple of Doom. where-
Remember when the
With
waiter
the-
is standing there with the stuff and the
And it just
champagne
bing!
glass? Yes,
Yeah,
and
and
then
it
he
comes
gets shot.
through
That's
and
and,
fine.
and he
I-
looks down
it
and
makes
the blood's
sense.
spreading. And
Well,
he
that's,
goes, and we went, oh man, that's it.
And they all we wrote that, and it took about 4 or 5 minutes to write that, and they all absolutely loved it. So
Yeah.
and it worked a treat. I mean, my dad said, he rang me up. My dad's a big fan of the show. Who killed him? I said, well, we don't know.
We have no idea.
What do you mean you
Someone.
don't know? I said, no,
Don't know.
we'll work it out next time. What do you mean you don't know who's going to shoot? Dad, don't worry, we'll work it out.
Yeah.
So it's quite.
So it was fun. So it started with a question, as
Yeah.
great mysteries do. Who shot
just like the
Harrow?
opening of Harrow, isn't it?
And the fact that he didn't know himself meant that we could travel with him, and we had enough story questions to
Yeah.
power a season.
It still became a revenge story, but it was in a different way.
In a
It's the
different way,
antagonist who was,
yeah.
out for
Yeah.
revenge.
Well, we'll very quickly just run through the rest of Moving Floor, then we'll jump into
Okay.
Harrow because I can feel it bubbling. So you talked about you have a development slate, and you talked about you have like 40 different projects between you, like films and shows and stuff.
Half-hour comedies, animation, the works. Yeah.
When can we expect some of that? And then are you guys just working independently
Soon,
on
I
different
hope.
things, or how is it all coming together?
We are. We do work independently on things. We have some projects, but there's nothing that we have, that's secretive or anything, even when we're working with other producers on things. And
Yeah.
we are partnering with some other Australian producers on some shows. We have a very exciting one that's set in Nashville, which is a kind of a medical crime one.
Yeah.
But
Which
I
is probably the lowest.
I value Leigh's expertise enormously, and I hope that anything I work on, he'll be a part of in some way, shape, or form,
I've
whether
got
it's
pretty
a
right.
moving floor production or whether it's not. Just because I really like the way he thinks about story. But we have a big slate of stuff that we have come up together with together. We came into it with a number of projects, but we've also developed quite a few just in the last 4 or 5 months.
Just they pop out.
Some of which have got some great interest, mostly overseas, we have to say.
It
Yeah.
tends to be where we're targeting. To be honest.
Well, that's what I was going to ask was, it sort of seems like you wanted to do a lot based in Queensland, and the website makes that very clear about, working in Queensland, but you've got a show in Nashville and you're making shows for
No, it doesn't mean we
international
can't shoot them
audiences.
Yeah.
Yeah, how is that all coming together? And is
Very well.
Queensland really the place to be given COVID and everything?
Correct.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and
It's actually a selling point.
No, it is a good selling point, but it comes back to what you said before about story being universal, no matter where it is in the
Yeah.
world. And we've got a great story that's being developed in the north of England, a crime show. And Leigh, as mentioned, we have a terrific period piece set in the 1930s that Leigh's come up with in Oklahoma. We've got some very monstery cross-genre stuff, which is set in London and South America.
Fun 1920s New York.
Yes.
the world of magic and.
Yeah, kind of a prestige.
So we do all sorts. We do
Yeah.
genre and then straight drama and comedy. It's really quite.
But
diverse.
we live in great
So-
times for you guys who are
Yeah.
coming up as we, become so old that we will die in harness soon.
Not me, but
Not you're the Roger Moore
Thank you.
of local writing. Because of Jean Favreau and what we're
Yeah.
seeing happening
Of
with
course.
LED wall VIP production.
we're talking to a lot of people.
This is a real great way to make stuff geographically
Yep.
agnostically. That we
Mm.
can, set stuff. We can have a scene in a London office shot here with an LED wall with the
Correct.
London Eye
And
out the
it's-
window, and all you need is a desk.
I mean, The Mandalorian is incredible. What they're
So
Yeah, it really is.
seeing how those shows have proven themselves to
Mm.
be cost effective in lots of ways. Just think about weather.
Yep.
You
Mm.
don't even have to. It can be hailing outside, and you can continue filming. And if you need to change scenes or shoot something with a green screen, you just flick a button.
And the people we're speaking to are very keen to come to Australia, obviously because of the COVID thing. They
Yeah.
know, like Young Rock is shooting here, as you know, for NBC
Yeah.
Universal up the road, and we can do that here. You can make this town look like anywhere in the world.
Brisbane-
Thor did the same thing,
It's a great place to live and work. I mean, our kids are in school here.
We like it
So
here.
selfishly, we want to work here. Our families are here. But also Queensland, is a great, it has some great locations. And Harrow was quite a travelogue of a show.
Yes, but shot all mostly in Brisbane.
We
all
shot
the
most of it in
travelogues.
southeast Queensland.
I mean, the one where they went to the Barrier Reef.
yeah, it was shot at the Gold
The,
Coast.
the crocodile one? Yeah.
Yeah.
It
Oh, that was at
no,
the Gold
we just-
Coast?
No, we shot in what's it called up on
Oh,
the...
wow.
Oh, Shorncliffe.
Shorncliffe we shot that. Where he was diving into the crocodile's
Yeah.
lair and all that. Shorncliffe.
So let's get into Harrow now. Huge thanks to everyone who submitted a question. There's some really great ones that we've gotten. You were talking about international appeal and how a really good story will translate into all the markets. And as we've seen in the last couple of days, there are people watching all over the world,
Amazing.
which is very cool. Big thanks to Debs from the Harrow Facebook page and Twitter as well for helping us get this out there, and Lynn Blank as well. Do you guys follow much of the chatter online about
Oh,
it?
we're
Try to
really
stay away
bad.
from it?
Frankly, we just don't have the time.
Yeah.
I mean, we both have young kids. I only worked out how kids were made really recently. So mine are still primary school and early high school. Yours are primary school.
Yeah, even getting to watch stuff at night
Yeah.
is almost... it's very
So
hard.
between
So
work and family life,
it's difficult.
That's right.
as much as we would love to be able to engage with everyone, there is a point where you just have to go, actually, I have to have a life apart from my work.
Yeah.
Otherwise,
it's all
I
consuming.
don't get stories to steal.
Yes, it is all consuming. Harrow is
Yeah.
all consuming when you're making it. So to
Very
continue
much.
it on weekends and evenings would be quite
So
brain-draining.
yeah, thanks everyone for
Yeah, now you get the opportunity. So the top question, which has been asked by Robin, Shirley, Linda, many others: when does season 3 air in Australia?
Are we allowed to say? It's very early in the new year.
Yeah, it won't be till next year,
It will be very early.
but
in
it
the
will
new
be
year.
on ABC in the first couple of months of
Very
2021.
exciting.
And it's
There we
going to
have
be... it's going to be fantastic, the pickup episode.
It's good. It's a good app. Tony Tills.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I should have let you keep going. I want to know more about.
Oh,
the
we
pickup
can't say
episode.
anything that's in it.
No.
Harrow's in it.
No.
Yeah, he is.
The follow-up question attached to that is: any ideas on when it launches in the US, Amazon Prime, Hulu, things like that?
I wish we knew.
It has first run in Australia always, and
yeah.
then it goes straight to Hulu. So I don't know if that means the whole season or not, but it goes to Hulu very quickly.
And I don't envy any of the programmers who work for those networks. It would be incredibly hard to know how that's all working in the current climate.
Yeah.
So we truly don't know. I wish we did,
Mm.
but it's those are for other smarter algorithms to work out.
All right. Michelle from France and Ollie Mickey want to know what we can expect from season 3. Will Harrow's son's murder be the main topic? And can you give us any clues on the kinds of cases the morgue will face?
Ooh.
Well, look, yes, that is absolutely what is the serial that
It's the driving serial.
That's the story that drives Harrow through
Harrow's
season
son.
3, is the death of his son in the shipyard. What
There'll be a
happened
twist,
and
though,
why? Of course, there's a twist. And we know that Harrow is a bit of a cad. and a bit of a trickster and a bit of a charmer. And we
Don't give anything away.
We know that his daughter is cut from that cloth.
Yes.
And she has a very integral part. So the father-daughter relationship
It's
that we loved in season 1 with
That's
Fern
good.
and Harrow really does take centre stage again.
That's the heart of the show, really.
It is the heart of
Absolutely
the
the heart
show,
of the show.
and that carries through, ups and downs. Episodically, we do have
there's some
some
fun stuff,
we
isn't
do
there?
have some fun crimes. Some of them address some fairly serious issues like homelessness. We have a very tender episode which involves a little bit of World War I artillery.
Yes, that's yep. One of mine.
A
And we
tender
also-
episode about World War One.
Yes,
Well,
it's
it
gonna be
involves it.
it's the log
That's
line.
not the tenderness.
So there's
The
a
tenderness
French
is-
connection to that one, isn't there? There's a connection back to the Fields of France.
There actually is.
And
yeah.
there's another one which is an X-File type episode,
Oh, exciting.
which was a great
with
one.
the
That was great.
supernatural
Yes.
thing, is it or is it not?
And then I'm trying to think, what else did we write?
Well, we actually have a really fun episode
yes.
where Harrow,
Blades.
Nichols, and Fairley go on a camping trip together.
Right, that one.
Very exciting.
to the
So-
rainforest, which was
Yeah, we can't really
Oh, this
say
is
too
the
much more.
the trip episode.
Yeah, this is
of
where
the
the three-
season.
the
right?
three
we
men get
we
together and
usually
go
have
bush.
an episode where they go on a bit of a journey, and in
Yeah.
this case, they go out together with a bottle of expensive whiskey, and adventure ensues.
Yeah, we did that. Remember, we went to Tropical North in the first season with Das, and he went obviously out to the outback town, Uralla Creek, I think it was, with Fairley
Yeah.
in
Yep.
season 2.
Yeah,
Home-
And then this
Hometown.
one he goes off, they go camping together, which is, bringing Nichols was quite genius. in that
it was
one.
a lot of fun.
Those
It was
three
a lot
boys
of fun to
together,
write.
and
and
they were up.
Grant Brown did a great job.
Yeah, and the night we're up there, up on shot in Mount Tambourine, the night they were up there, the guys were so keen, they went and rehearsed all their stuff, and they got
Yeah.
their lines going, they worked all the
And there was a
comedy
fire
through, it was
ban,
just
and of course, a campfire and a fire ban is not an easy thing to pull
No.
off.
magic
but,
of special effects. We had a
But we there was some fantastic people working on season 3 in all aspects of the show. Art department.
Shout out to
props.
Facundo,
oh yeah,
Totally.
location manager.
Mm.
Sounds good. I'm very excited. I'm very
Mm.
excited for the new year. I've missed it. Like I just thinking about it the other day. I was like, yeah, it's been a while since it's been
Yes,
on, and
it
I missed
has.
that week.
But
to
all
week.
those stories, always we're still looking for that little Harrow-esque thing. I always call it, which
Yeah.
is that interesting crime forensic thing. That in
The
fact,
tw-
there's one where
The twist.
there's one where a murderer, the girl gets. Oh no, I won't give it away. I won't
You
give
can't.
It, can't give it away.
So close.
want
So
to.
excited
close.
to talk
Yes,
about.
I was nearly about to issue the
We'll
gag
get you back
order.
on for a spoiler edition where you can
Spoiler
just
free, yeah.
discuss the whole thing. Lynn, I'm not quite sure, from Germany asks a very good question, actually. She was talking to someone about watching shows in the original English or in their own language. And so she's asking if you ever think about problems of like synchronization in terms of dubbing when you're writing. And do you have any, as producers, any influence in who dubs the show in other countries?
Often in that world, they have each different country obviously has their own little setups for that. So when they're
Yeah.
buying those foreign shows, those networks often have those companies who take care of that. And Johan has his own voiceover guy for each different country.
Oh, wow.
He has a German that does all of his shows or movies from Mr. Fantastic all the way through.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, Tom Hanks has them and Cruise.
Yeah.
It's quite normal. So it's not something we give thought to when we're writing.
No, we do give a lot of thought though when we do actually have foreign language within the show.
Yes.
That if we have,
We have
you know, like
consultants on
Spanish-speaking characters and how the subtitling will go.
Yeah.
Like how much appetite will the audience have for reading subtitles, and those are absolutely considerations which we take into account at script stage, and you know how to convey information where we have, you know, we do have, and we're in season 1 with our railroad tracks.
Yeah.
Great episode,
But
honestly.
because
One
we're
of my
not
favorites.
That was
bilingual,
fun.
because not bilingual, it's hard to actually judge that, to actually make a comment.
Yeah.
Yeah,
My
it's
wife
a-
is, and she often says the original language is always better.
It's a great question, and there are so many colloquialisms, and we hope
Yeah.
that they're not lost on
That's right.
our fans
But it's
in
not
other
parochial.
countries.
It's not-
No, it's not parochial, but you know there are colloquialisms like Nichols has a
certainly
few
Nichols, yes.
that are quite distinctive
Yes.
Australian sayings that may not translate effectively, but that's
My
that's
favourite
okay.
was, I think it was ashtray on a motorbike.
Oh, useful as an ashtray on a motorbike.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's Stephen.
yeah, he had a few of those.
You had an old mate who Spoke.
I worked with a fantastic guy when I was a handyman, and he had all of these.
He wrote them down.
sayings.
Because he knew Harrow was coming 20 years into the future, so he wrote everything down.
I remember a few of them. Yeah.
I'm excited for this season's red herring, the galvanized pipe.
Well, there are.
There is a length of pipe involved.
Chekhov's pipe.
I
yeah.
don't think it's Chekhov's pipe.
There
It
is
had
one,
to
right?
be used.
Yes, it is involved in the big finale, a galvanized pipe.
Yes,
actually.
we do get to see it.
Wow.
Rusted, actually, but
Exclusive. You heard it here first.
Yep.
Galvanized pipes.
Pipegate.
Pipegate. Oh, this will be a thing now. I hope you're aware. We'll keep barreling on because we've got quite a lot, and I want to make sure that we get through these. Karen asks if you had one thing that was the most difficult to do in the production of Harrow, what would it be?
I think casting is always really hard.
Casting is everything with a show like apart from writing, of course. But once even when you're writing, you have to think about how realistic is it going to be to cast this character, because you want
It can kill.
it can make or break a role. So I would think that getting the casting right, and that's one of the things with our new company, is that we absolutely want to make sure that we have a strong hand in casting as many of
Because they live
big
in
and
our
small.
minds.
Like
These
even
characters
a
live-
badly cast small role can, for us anyway, discolour an entire episode.
It's extraordinary because they live in your mind. You have a very clear idea of what that person should be. You'll never
Definitely.
find that exact person.
And sometimes it's better.
Sometimes it is better.
And that's where a great casting director, and we've worked with some
Many,
terrific
yeah.
people.
Shout out to Tom McSweeney,
Terrific.
Slop Shack
Tom,
alum.
Love Tom.
So
Tom's great.
getting the casting right.
Editing, I think the post. Well, directing is always getting the right director is also really really important.
Yes, absolutely. Look, we've worked with some great directors, some great editors.
But Harrow has a very particular style,
Yep.
and we do a lot on a very very short schedule. You have to work incredibly fast, our crews, and they're at the point now where they're so well oiled as a machine. They do it really really well.
I think the actual hardest thing though is cutting out a joke. When you write, when you write a scene that maybe it's got fairly in it, and you write it and this is funny, or this is good, and then you go, for schedule, this script is 2 pages too long. We have to cut something out.
Never cut the jokes.
Never cut the joke.
So actually, when you
cut
do have to
lines.
cut a joke, that's what
It
really
is.
hurts.
But ultimately, it's the writing. It is the scripting is
Yeah,
the
of
hardest
course.
part. And I've spoken to many producer years ago, and I said, the hardest part is the writing. They said, really? Producing something? No, because they're not a writer. They had no
Yeah.
idea how hard it is to go from a blank page to something, because it all starts there.
Exactly. Yeah.
So everyone else is looking at a piece of material and making a value judgment after that point. But we're looking at nothing. when
Well,
we
without a
start.
script, you don't have
Exactly.
anything to produce.
So it is the
that's for sure.
hardest thing.
And there's a deadline and
Producing's hard. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
I mean, those
It's
convincing people
laborious.
to part with their money is not an easy thing to do. And fortunately now, after all this time and having a track record, it makes it easier. But it's still not easy.
All right, we'll quickly jump through. Dr. Daniel Harrow himself asks, I'm curious to know if any of the cases presented on the show are based on real cases.
Yes, they are.
Absolutely. But this is what Leigh was. I think this is what you might have been referring to earlier with the Harrow-esque thing.
Yes.
Often when we would go into a season, we would have a list of 20 or 25
News
real-life
articles, yeah.
cases or news articles, and some fantastic ones which we didn't use. Remember the vulture flesh one?
Yeah.
That was the vultures when they're scared will vomit up their last meal. So there was a
Right.
case, I think it was in the Midwest in America, where there was this flesh snow coming down on this farm, and they went, "What is this? Where did it come from?"
You analyse the flesh.
It's human flesh. Where? And apparently it was
Pretty Harrow-esque.
so
yeah.
very Harrow-esque. So those are the sorts of stories that we look for. But often we will go, okay, here's a story. It's not quite enough by itself. We need another story, and we need to join those two things
The crocodile
together.
being a great example of that. Now, the shark arm mystery from 1930s in Sydney Harbour.
wasn't it?
Yep, the cops opened. So a fisherman, I think, opened up a shark and an arm popped out.
With
Wow.
a tattoo on it.
Yeah, with a tattoo on it. And the cops realised it was an underworld figure. He hadn't been eaten by the shark.
And
He'd
fed.
been murdered before. So that really was the whole crocodile episode was an homage.
Yeah, we stole it.
Yeah, we stole it.
From real life.
So this question has a spoiler warning. Although if you're remotely aware of Harrow, you probably know what's happened if you're watching this. Drew and Jessica, they want to know why you killed Remy.
Oh.
The question that will follow you till your
It
grave.
wasn't something we decided. It just
Trust
didn't come from
me,
the
it
writers'
was
room.
the last thing
We
that we
loved
wanted
Remy.
to do.
Yeah.
That
We
relationship was
loved from the pilot episode, writing the pilot, that relationship, that brotherly relationship between Simon and Harrow was one of the things that I personally really loved, and I loved that Simon is a gay character, and Harrow is quite a manly man in his own way, but they love each other so much. They're real brothers, and that relationship, to have to call time on that was very hard. But Remy is a great actor and a very handsome young man, and he has a stellar career ahead of him. And we got the information that he needed to move on, so we had to find a way to do it.
I think he wanted to move on earlier, and we said, please come back for 2 or 3 episodes. We begged him.
Initially,
Right
it was going to be episode 1
Yes, and he was
of season 2.
He was great. He said, yeah, because remember, once you've got him, we only had him for, I think we killed him at the end of the 3rd episode, and the 4th, he had to be a body on the table as well.
Right.
So even though we had him for 4, we could only really have the character in 3 because he was a dead body in episode 4. So it was... it's amazing how well that worked for the ratings, but of course it was entirely not planned that way.
No, it was really...
And in fact, there was another character who was going to get... Yes, another character was going to die.
Another character was going to
another one of the main characters was going to
but
die.
she didn't in the end.
No, and
Yeah.
then one of the main cast.
Yeah.
And then because Remy came back with his, no, I don't want to do 4 episodes, so we said, all right, so we swapped out the death and we made Remy die. Now, I guess we can tell. Can we tell who it was?
Pavich.
Pavich was
we were...
That's what I was going to say. Yeah.
Pavich was going to die, and then we basically swapped it out for Remy once you realised Remy was not going to come back for 3 or 4 episodes.
we
Yeah.
love working with Robin
Yeah.
as well.
Robin
So to say goodbye to Pavich was incredibly hard too.
So she's back
So-
for season 3?
Well, no, as you know, she quit at the end of season 2.
Yeah, that's what I was... Yeah.
So
but
after what she'd done, after covering up, there's no way that character could.
Yeah.
unfortunately, we had to. Yeah, that was written in. That was our
Yeah.
way to exit her with
So that
Which was again
her
was her choice.
character
She didn't
with.
want to return for season 3.
Well, Robin is such an amazing actor as
She was
well.
so busy.
She has offers galore, and can't blame her for taking them up.
But the Remy death was difficult on all of us. Really, it was hard to lose him, and nicely done. Really unexpected, I think.
Yeah.
That Chester was on the boat.
Apparently, the ratings
Oh, they absolutely.
for that episode went really
It did.
high.
And then which was which I call mid-season peak. And
Yeah.
now I know one of the executives at ABC is now talking to other productions saying we need the mid-season peak, but you
Yeah.
can't always just kill a character
No.
off to do that.
No.
It can't always manufacture that.
Yeah.
So
Though we did.
it just shows how loved that the boy was.
Well, it's all about
Character.
caring for characters and writing a great character that
my sister
it
was
shows
happy.
on the page.
My mum was not happy.
Well, I mean, this question's it's going to follow you forever, it seems.
That's okay.
But I guess that means you wrote a good character.
Because he was
people cared
fun
about.
too.
Yeah.
Teasing between them. It
Uh,
was just great.
Zora from Scotland and Gemma from the UK, they're asking about the challenges of filming after lockdown, particularly when you were so close to the finish line and then the plug got pulled. And then Zora asked specifically if you had to change any storylines to suit the situation.
Yes.
Yeah, no, it was very difficult. Well, everything shut down, as you know. And Johan had to return to his home and his family in Los Angeles. And credit to Hoodlum for pulling it together to get this last week of filming
Amazing.
that we owed, because it required a lot of procedure and
No one was
pages and pages and pages of procedure
The
to
cast
follow.
were contracted to come back, so all that had to be.
Yeah.
It was tough on Deb and the team.
And tough financially, because anyone from interstate or international have to quarantine. So those bills all have to be paid as well. And there are some people who simply could not come back.
Yep.
And
Moved on to other shows in New Zealand, for example. Someone was on
a different show.
Lord of the Rings, I think, in New Zealand.
Yeah, I think on Lord
so
of the
we couldn't
Rings.
bring them back. So
Yeah.
we had to.
Wow.
Stephen had to sort of put our heads down and come up with fixes, didn't we?
How
Story
do
fixes.
how
How
yeah
do we suddenly
how
not
do
see this character
we
for two
how do we do
episodes?
that?
Yeah.
Got away with
Fortunately, we knew the parameters because we'd shot so much of it. There was only a week, so there was literally only so much that we could adjust.
Yeah.
So it wasn't, but the things that we did were significant. Like a character cannot appear again. We have to find
we could
another.
ADR them. We could have their voices, but we couldn't actually see them. So there's a few characters in the showers in the background and just off screen, and stuff like that. We had to do
phone calls.
Phone calls, where we just. But I don't think the audience will notice. It'd be really interesting to see if anyone notices.
It will. Yeah,
Because I don't think
because it's not shot linearly, as you know. It's
Yes.
not. We don't film scene 1, then scene 2, then scene 3. We shoot in blocks. So episodes 9 and 10 were shot concurrently, and it all depended on the schedule. So there were the stuff from all through those 2 episodes in different spots that
our
needed
murder
to be
victim we
picked up.
couldn't get back, in fact. So amazingly, this is a credit to our cinematographer. They got a double, but then they replicated that. They did have one shot of her on the ground dead.
Yeah.
They replicated the shot inside the autopsy
And our
room,
post-production
so they could
people,
just stick her
face
face
replace.
face replace. And it's
CGI,
you couldn't tell. It's extraordinary.
Yeah,
what
the
they
face replace was pretty good.
did. That saved
Very
our
cool.
bum a lot, actually.
Yeah, so once again, technology, it's
Yeah,
proving
the way of the future.
that we can do COVID safe. But the thing was, it worked, and a credit to everyone involved that we were able to get people from interstate and overseas safely here, complete the filming, and then safely home. So, and I think that this is something, as this horribleness continues for a while, Brisbane is a really nice COVID safe place to film.
We're very lucky.
And it's not just the filming, it's also the quality of life that we can still enjoy here. Like after this, if we want to go and grab a beer at a pub, which we probably won't, we can, because we're not in lockdown.
Yeah.
So,
And whenever we talk to
Queensland's pretty cool.
Americans particularly, they're amazed that life here seems
Well,
because in LA they're all
and I'm
down.
sure the UK is going through
It's
it,
gonna go through a bad
and
patch.
and Europe is not having the best of times at the moment. I know that
We're
there are
extremely lucky.
resurgences with new waves. Poor Iran is
And
going
David
through
Attenborough
it.
said, "Where in the world would he like to be?" He said, "Australia."
Yeah.
There you go. It's coming from David.
Well, I'm very happy that I'm in Australia too, especially as a film student graduating now. So it should be interesting to see how the next few years fare, especially with you guys getting projects off the ground now in Queensland. It seems very sort of fortuitous, I suppose.
It is weird, isn't it, Steve?
Yeah. So final question. Svetlana is asking about season 4. Should we go into season 3 expecting this to be the last season for a while, or what's
We
the
don't know.
plan?
Look, it's a question that we ask ourselves.
Yeah.
quite a lot. We love writing Daniel Harrow,
Yeah.
and we would be very happy to see that season 4 manifest in the way that we're thinking about it. We have to wait for a lot of ducks to get in a row, and the world needs to get in a healthier place.
Yeah.
but
I've always wanted to see a Harrow Christmas special. Like a
Like the Star Wars
BBC
one. It's a
style.
great
Yeah,
world,
yeah, holidays.
That's right, Star Wars
We can have
Yeah.
Life Day, but we'll call
A
it
variety
Death
show.
Day.
Special
Death
is an
Day.
interesting idea, or a telemovie, because Jack Irish spun off and did telemovies, as you know. and
Yeah,
they
I
did
always
90-minute
thought that
dramas.
the format would kind of work for like a 90-minute Harrow
Totally.
Christmas special.
Like Brady Bunch Goes to Hawaii,
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
or what was the one where Fonzie actually jumped the shark?
That
Where-
was go
was
to
that
Hollywood.
Hawaii
They all went
as
to
well?
Hollywood. Richie got offered a contract in Hollywood.
We are did he?
Yeah, and so they all went out.
We're aware of sharks and jumping. We don't want
That's
to
good.
overstay our welcome. We're very grateful that we've got 30 episodes under the belt, and that we have some lovely viewers, and obviously some of them will get in touch.
But there are
today.
plenty of stories out there.
There's a lot of crime still for our pathologists to solve, if we are so lucky.
Awesome. I apologize if we didn't get to answer your question, but I'll put the link to the recent Screen Queensland Q&A that you guys did, which is the middle of COVID, beginning of COVID. When was that?
Right, yeah.
It was like in
February,
June or
March, yeah.
March.
You mean the Zoom one? Or
The Zoom one. The
Oh,
Zoom
okay.
one.
Yeah.
That was in June.
Which is, I think it's on YouTube.
It
So
is.
Oh,
go
okay.
to the description and you guys answer a couple more questions that were very good there.
Probably.
So, I just have one question for me. Why can't I buy Harrow on DVD or on iTunes or watch it on a
That's
streamer.
to do with
here.
the way Disney and Hulu, I think, distribute it. It's
Yeah.
been out
Will
of
there
our
ever
hands.
be a physical release that we might be able to get our
I
hands
just
on?
don't know that the world works in that way.
No.
anymore, Harry.
I know, but it's so difficult to find sometimes on
It is.
ABC and
Curiously, someone's
iView.
uploaded them all to YouTube.
yeah, I did notice that.
Really?
But then
Yeah,
I'm
which is very
thinking,
naughty.
mm,
I know. it's
I
very
have to
naughty.
say,
Someone needs
it
to
is
get around that.
frustrating when you want to. I was looking for Paris, Texas online the other day, looking at all my streamers that I subscribe to. Couldn't find it anywhere. I'm going to have to go onto Fishpond and buy a
Yeah.
DVD of it, I think.
You
That's right, I
can get
couldn't
a
find Road to
Harrow
Perdition on it's unbelievable.
Road to Perdition,
Yeah, I couldn't
really.
find it the other day.
I know you can get a copy of
Wow.
Harrow physically, I think on Amazon somewhere, but
Wow.
it ships from the US, like it's a US copy.
It's extraordinary.
I wonder if it's the
Uh,
cut downs.
Yeah.
It will be the cut downs, I imagine. Yeah.
Mm.
Remember, there's two versions out there.
Yeah,
There's
the Hulu
Australian
version.
52-minute version
It's
and
the 52
40.
and the 42s.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
I must say there's much more character stuff in the Australian version.
That's
There's
good.
more because there's more.
Yeah,
exactly.
makes
Yeah.
sense. But yeah, I guess the world doesn't really work in a physical medium.
No,
So
unfortunately.
people like
not.
us who like the physical copies
Yeah.
don't get that.
We are all.
Look, the ABC may replay it before launch.
I
but-
hope it.
but
I
don't
hope
know.
it gets another airing
I'm not
on iView. We
Mm.
love that platform.
I'm sure it will. The final segment for today's podcast is a little segment we did with Shane. It's called the Triviad. I'm sure you're aware of IMDb trivia on your IMDb pages for your shows. There's a section where it
Always
gives you
fun.
a bunch of different facts about the making of a show.
Mhm.
The Harrow page, lots of interesting things on there, but the Tidelands one, not so much. So I wanted to ask you guys if you could give us a fun fact from Tidelands that would fit on the IMDb trivia page.
Charlotte Best could not actually breathe underwater.
Huh.
The opening and the trawler on the sea, that's all CGI. That's an interesting fact.
Wait, really?
Yeah. We did
Wow.
not shoot out that boat going through those waves. That is entirely computer generated.
Wow.
It's extraordinary.
I wonder if there's anything that we know that.
Zach Maney on the deck of the boat, strung up again,
Mhm.
was shot in a studio. That was not shot.
I have a fun fact,
Hmm.
courtesy of Tom McSweeney. Actually, no,
Mm.
I think it was Nathan. Said that the morgue at the end of Tidelands
Harrow
is the Harrow morgue,
Yes.
which I didn't notice at the time. I thought that was awesome.
That's amazing because we were so nervous.
That is
Nathan and
true.
I, that actually it would be so visible.
no,
And I
just
think
didn't know.
that the Devil's Tail, I could be wrong about this, so correct me, was that that Matt based the design of that very closely on the same bar that they used for Predestination.
Oh, I didn't know that.
It's a great movie.
Yeah, so I think he might have. I could be completely wrong, but I think he repurposed the same plans to build the Devil's Tail because it was such a good.
We also
plan.
Aquaman had finished filming, and we went down there and we got a lot of props from Aquaman appearing.
I have
And
a fun
Tidelands.
fact. I have a fun fact, which is at home in my flanking my television are two
Oh, yeah.
Egyptian statuettes
From-
that I managed to get from Tidelands
Mm.
that were part of the Dora the Explorer movie.
There you go.
So
This is now Stephen's fun facts.
yeah,
That's hilarious.
Extraordinary.
so it's amazing the stuff that can move.
Yeah.
Across genres.
Will you take? Do you have anything from the Harrow set? Anything
Yes.
that you've stolen along the way?
Stolen. I was gifted a QIFM, a Queensland Institute of
very
Forensic Medicine, forensic slide cardboard thing. What I wanted was Harrow's nameplate from his door, but I
that
didn't.
went
get
very
it.
quickly, actually. No,
I
got
imagine it
I
did.
got a bronze shark paperweight, which is fantastic
Did
from
you?
Harrow's
You
office.
did- you
Don't know
did-
where that
you
was.
did all right.
Don't know where that was hidden, but it was. There's a fox in there that no one took. There's all sorts. Of
I
bits and
didn't.
pieces
Wouldn't
in that
want
place.
a dead animal. That's
But
bit
there's also things in
unsavoury for me.
jars in his office.
Yeah, there are.
The set was extraordinary.
The production
it was
design
a
is
fantastic
excellent.
office.
Speaking of IMDb, on your page it says that you are doing the graphics for Saturday Night Live.
Oh yeah, that's my other side business. I worked on Saturday Night Live, circa 1981 or something.
Right.
The years Dan
Were you
Aykroyd
like
was there.
9 years old?
No, that just happens to be someone who's got the name Leigh McGrath.
Yeah, I was very because that is like 2020, like very like recent.
Oh, was it? Okay.
Yeah, and so I was
But I
like,
quite- hey,
how is he also?
Strange, you can't remove it, but I thought, wow, what a great credit to have that I worked on Saturday Night Live.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting.
So it's.
I did not know that.
It's funny. There's a few inaccuracies on those sites. Not so much lately, but the earliest work and certainly mine. There's certain episodes that are missing and names of shows that are incorrect. And
I must
things like
check my wiki page.
that. Yeah.
That sounds a bit navel-gazy to go and Google yourself.
Oh, he does it all the time, folks.
I mean, you got to, and then there's sometimes, inaccuracies. You want to find out.
I
what's
don't
happening.
know if I need to know. It's like reading
Yeah.
reviews,
Oh, yeah,
If
never
you
read
don't
reviews.
focus on the good ones.
Yeah.
If you read reviews, all you think about are the bad ones. So it's good advice is not to
What's
read them.
fascinating is to see Google. I prefer reading the Google reviews or something that people, because Harrow's are overwhelmingly positive, and on Rotten Tomatoes, Tidelands is overwhelmingly positive.
It
it's
is.
fantastic.
Is it?
And
Okay.
has got a higher percentage than The Rise of Skywalker. So I was really pleased about that.
God, don't even get me started on the
Don't
rise
get me
of
started on The
Skywalker.
Rise of
Well,
JJ.
Oh boy,
Hmm.
it's directed really well.
Yeah. Well,
Shot very
it
well.
comes down to the script, doesn't it?
Exactly, and that's the
Fantastic
lesson
work.
of today is you gotta.
Value the script.
Yes. All right. Thank you very much for joining us on episode 27 of the SLOP Podcast. Stephen, Lee, it's been a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you very much for tuning in. Sorry if we didn't answer your questions. I've linked another discussion with Stephen and Lee in the description below that might answer some of your questions if I didn't talk about it here. And make sure to check out our episode with Shane where we talk about writing horror movies and all sorts of spooky things for the spooky season. And make sure to subscribe to the channel. And thank you very much for tuning in. Good luck with Moving Floor. I know you guys are very busy. Seems like you got a lot on your slate.
Yeah.
But we're very excited to see it. We're very excited for season 3 of Harrow, like you said, coming out in the new year. And I wish you all the best. In the words of Indiana Jones, I wish you fortune and glory. Good luck with everything. Do you guys have an outro? Do you guys have a sign-off, a signature?
Okie dokie, Indy.
As long as
Short
it's
round,
not from
folks.
Temple of Doom,
That was from
hold
Temple
on
of
to which I think might be
Hold on to
Shane's
your
favourite.
potatoes.
Yeah.
Hold on to your potatoes,
There's lots
Dr.
of like in
Jones.
Temple of Doom, better
Yeah.
than the Crystal Skull.
It was a great start.
Anyway.
No, we don't, but
That's okay.
Fair play to you. Thank you for having
Thanks,
us.
All the best for you guys. Thank
Okay,
you very
thank
much.
you.
Thanks, Harry. Thanks, everyone.